For Janitor's son fell in love with a billionaire's daughter. What happened next shocked everyone. Everyone froze the moment Ethan Cole, the janitor's son, stood before the billionaire's daughter, Olivia Brooks, and said words no one expected to hear. The grand hall filled with whispers, disbelief, and gasps, as the young man in a worn-out shirt dared to confess something that even a millionaire CEO would never imagine saying out loud. The guards took a step forward, the billionaire's face turned pale, and Olivia's eyes widened in shock. No one understood how a poor janitor's son could walk into a world built on diamonds and gold, yet stand taller than everyone in it. What Ethan revealed that night wasn't just bold, it was life-changing, and from that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan Cole had lived his entire life in the shadows of New York's shining towers, towers he could only clean, never enter. His father, Henry, worked as a janitor for one of the largest corporations in the city, Brooks Industries, a billion-dollar empire owned by Richard Brooks, one of the most powerful CEOs in America. Every evening, Ethan joined his father after college, mopping the marble floors of the same building where billionaires made decisions that shaped the world. Their small apartment sat above a noisy laundromat. The walls were cracked, and the sound of dripping pipes never stopped. But despite the struggle, Ethan always carried a quiet fire in his eyes, the kind that poverty couldn't extinguish. His mother, Lily, had been sick for years, her medicine costing more than Henry could earn in a week, yet Ethan never complained. Every night before falling asleep, he would whisper to her, "One day, Mom, I'll make things better." On the other side of the city, Olivia Brooks lived a life many could only dream of. Her father's penthouse overlooked Central Park. Gold chandeliers, marble floors, and walls lined with artwork worth more than entire neighborhoods. But inside that world of endless wealth, Olivia felt strangely empty. Her days were filled with charity events, business meetings, and social media flashes. People smiled at her because of her last name, not because they truly cared. Her father, Richard, was proud yet distant, a billionaire CEO who believed emotions were weaknesses. He had built his empire from nothing and expected his daughter to marry into power, not love. "You have everything you'll ever need," he often told her. But deep inside, Olivia felt she had nothing at all. One rainy night, fate quietly connected two worlds that should never have met. Ethan had stayed late, helping his father fix a broken elevator in the Brooks Tower. Soaked in rain, he walked out carrying a heavy toolbox when he noticed a luxury car stopped nearby. The passenger door opened, and a young woman stepped out. Her umbrella flipped by the wind, her heels slipping on the wet pavement. Without thinking, Ethan ran toward her and grabbed her hand just before she fell. Their eyes met, his filled with concern, hers with surprise. "Thank you," she said softly, brushing rain from her hair. He smiled, shaking his head. "You should be careful around here. The ground looks nice, but hides trouble." She looked at him strangely, maybe because no one had ever spoken to her like that, as if she were just another person. Olivia didn't know who he was, but something about his simplicity stayed with her. The next day, she saw him again in the lobby of her father's company, carrying cleaning supplies. Their worlds collided once more. She smiled politely and he nodded, pretending not to notice her attention, but she noticed his hands, rough from work, and the tired yet proud way he carried himself. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. For the first time, she thought about someone outside her golden cage, someone real. Meanwhile, Richard Brooks was preparing for his annual charity gala, a massive event that brought together millionaires, investors, and celebrities. Unknowingly, Ethan and his father were assigned to clean the same ballroom where the event would take place. As they polished the floor, Ethan's father sighed. "This room sparkles for people who don't even see us, son." Ethan just smiled faintly. Maybe one day someone will. He didn't know that someone already had. From a distance, Olivia watched him work, quiet, focused, invisible to the powerful men around him. Her curiosity grew stronger by the minute. Who was this boy who spoke to her without fear, who seemed untouched by the world her father ruled? As the gala approached, a strange thought wouldn't leave her mind. What if the person she'd been waiting for all her life wasn't among the billionaires in the room, but among the ones cleaning it? And as the night of the gala began, Olivia made a decision that would change everything, one that no one, not even her father, could ever predict. The night of the Brooks Industries charity gala glowed with 1,000 lights. Laughter echoed across the ballroom, champagne glasses clinked, and a live orchestra filled the air with warmth. Every guest wore confidence like armor, every guest except one. Ethan Cole stood quietly in a dark corner, wearing his father's old black shirt, helping the maintenance crew keep the event spotless. He didn't belong there. Yet fate had placed him right in the middle of the billionaire world he only ever saw from afar. Across the hall, Olivia Brooks arrived, radiant in an elegant silver gown. Her father, Richard, walked beside her, shaking hands with politicians and CEOs. Olivia smiled politely, but her eyes kept drifting toward the workers, toward one face in particular, the same boy from the rainy night. Ethan didn't notice her at first, too focused on making sure every glass sparkled under the chandelier. But when their eyes met again, something stirred. For a brief moment, the noise of the room disappeared. It was just her and him, two souls standing on opposite sides of life's wall. Later that evening, Olivia wandered away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner near the piano. She sat down and began playing softly, something she hadn't done in years. To her surprise, Ethan approached, holding a tray of empty glasses. "You play beautifully," he said gently. She looked up, a little startled, then smiled. "You know music?" He hesitated, then sat beside the piano bench. "My mom taught me. Before she got sick, I used to fix broken instruments people threw away, I guess. Music doesn't care how rich or poor you are." Olivia was moved. His voice carried something rare, honesty. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Most people I know care too much about everything else." As they talked, laughter and applause from the crowd faded behind them. For the first time, Olivia felt like she could breathe. And for the first time, Ethan felt seen. But the magic didn't go unnoticed. Richard Brooks stood across the room, watching his daughter laugh with the janitor's son. His jaw tightened. He whispered to his assistant, "Find out who that boy is." Moments later, the music stopped. Olivia turned to Ethan and asked, "Would you play something?" He looked unsure. "I haven't played in years." "Please," she insisted. Ethan's hands trembled as they touched the keys. The melody that filled the hall was raw, emotional, a song full of pain, hope, and silent love. The crowd slowly turned toward the sound. Even the CEO stopped speaking. When the final note echoed through the room, everyone froze. Some clapped, others whispered, "Who is he?" Olivia's eyes shimmered with pride. But before she could say a word, Richard's voice cut through the applause. "Who allowed him to touch that piano?" The hall fell silent. Ethan stood frozen. Olivia's smile faded. Richard's face hardened as he stared directly at Ethan. "I don't care where he came from," he said coldly. "But I want to know why my daughter is talking to the janitor's son." Ethan's heart pounded. Olivia gasped, and in that moment, the world that had briefly felt kind suddenly turned against him. The next morning, word spread like wildfire. Everyone in Brooks Industries was whispering about the janitor's son, who dared to play the piano at the Billionaire's gala. Some mocked him, others admired him, but one thing was certain. Richard Brooks was furious. Ethan tried to keep his head down, scrubbing the marble floors like nothing had happened. But whispers followed him wherever he went. The staff snickered. Executives sneered. Yet deep inside, he held on to the sound of Olivia's applause, the only one that had truly mattered. Later that day, a black car stopped outside the maintenance entrance. Richard Brooks stepped out, sharp and intimidating. He walked straight toward Ethan, who stood frozen, holding a mop. "I'll make this simple," Richard said, his voice cold as stone. "Stay away from my daughter. Whatever dream you're chasing, it ends now." Ethan tried to speak, but Richard held up a hand. "You're not the first poor boy who's mistaken kindness for love. Here's something for your trouble." He slipped an envelope of money onto the table. Ethan looked at it, then at the billionaire. "You think money can erase people, sir?" His voice trembled, but his eyes stayed firm. "My father cleans your floors with pride. I won't sell my dignity to you." Richard's expression hardened. "You'll regret this." He turned and left, leaving silence in his wake. That night, Ethan returned home to find his mother coughing uncontrollably. Her medicine was almost finished. The hospital bill had doubled. He sat beside her, holding her hand, torn between pride and desperation. Meanwhile, Olivia confronted her father. "Why did you humiliate him?" she demanded. "Because I'm protecting you," Richard snapped. "You don't understand how the world works. People like him don't love. They climb," her voice broke. "No, Dad. People like him feel more than anyone I've ever met." Richard slammed his fist on the desk. "Enough!" Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she ran from the room. She didn't know where to go, only that her heart led her to the one person her father despised. When she arrived at Ethan's apartment, she found him sitting beside his unconscious mother, panic in his eyes. "Ethan!" she gasped, rushing to him. He looked up, broken. "I can't afford the surgery." Olivia grabbed his hands, trembling. "Then I'll help you." And just as hope flickered between them, a knock thundered on the door. It was Richard's men. The door burst open and Richard Brooks stepped in, rain dripping from his coat, fury burning in his eyes. Behind him stood two men from his security team. Olivia froze, gripping Ethan's arm, but her father's voice sliced through the room like a knife. "I told you to stay away from her, boy," Richard thundered. "And now you've dragged my daughter into this?" Ethan stood protectively in front of Olivia and his unconscious mother. His voice shook, but didn't break. "She came here on her own, sir. She wanted to help." Richard's gaze darkened. "Help? Do you even realize what this looks like? The media is already talking. You've embarrassed my family, my company." "Your company?" Ethan cut in sharply. "You mean the one my father's been cleaning for 20 years? The one that fired him when he got hurt on the job? That's what this is about, isn't it? Power. Image, money." Richard's jaw tightened. For the first time he hesitated. Olivia stepped forward, tears glistening. "Dad, please. He's not like you think. He's been through more pain than we could imagine, and he still stands tall." "Enough, Olivia!" Richard snapped. "You're blinded by pity." Her voice broke. "No, I'm blinded by love." The room fell silent. The words hung heavy in the air, echoing louder than any shout. Richard staggered back as if struck. "You love him?" Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to say it. Not like this, not now. Olivia's voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "Yes, and I won't apologize for it." Richard's rage turned to something deeper. Fear, confusion, pride fighting against emotion. He looked at Ethan, then at the frail woman lying in bed. "If you truly cared for her," he said coldly, "you'd let my daughter go. You have nothing to offer her." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but his tone was steady. "Maybe not money, but I have something you lost a long time ago. A heart." Richard's face went pale. He turned away, signaling his men. "We're done here." As the door slammed shut, Olivia's sobs broke the silence. She fell into Ethan's arms, trembling. But before they could say another word, Ethan's mother took a shallow breath, then went still. "Mom," Ethan whispered, shaking her gently. No response. Olivia gasped. Ethan's heart shattered, and as sirens wailed in the distance, one truth became painfully clear. Love had brought them together, but tragedy was about to tear them apart. The hospital room was silent, except for the steady beeping of machines. Ethan sat beside his mother's lifeless body, her hand cold in his. Olivia stood behind him, unable to hold back her tears. Hours had passed since the doctors had said the words he'd feared all his life. She was gone. He didn't cry at first. He just stared, empty, until the weight of it crushed him. "I promised her I'd make life better," he whispered, voice breaking. "But all I did was fail." Olivia knelt beside him, taking his hand. "You didn't fail." You gave her everything you could. Your love, your strength, that's worth more than any fortune. Before Ethan could reply, the door opened quietly. Richard Brooks stepped inside, his expression no longer filled with anger, but regret. He looked older, smaller somehow, as if something inside him had finally cracked. "I heard about your mother," he said softly. "I'm sorry." Ethan turned, his voice heavy with grief. "Sorry won't bring her back." "I know," Richard replied. "But she raised a man I can finally respect." He paused, guilt flickering across his face. "I built my empire on power, and it cost me my humanity. You reminded me what I lost." Ethan looked at him, torn between fury and forgiveness. "Then prove it," he said quietly. "Not to me, to her." He pointed toward Olivia. Richard's gaze softened as he turned to his daughter. "You were right, Liv. Money can't build what kindness can." For a moment it felt like the storm had passed. But fate wasn't finished yet. A nurse hurried into the room, clutching a folder. "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry. There's an issue with the hospital bills. Your mother's insurance didn't cover the surgery. You owe—" Ethan didn't even hear the rest. His world spun again. He had no savings, no one to turn to. Then Richard spoke firmly. "Send the bills to me!" The nurse nodded and left. Olivia smiled faintly, relief washing over her, but Ethan's expression didn't change. He stood slowly. "You don't have to do this." Richard met his eyes. "I do, because this time it's not business, it's redemption." Outside the hospital, rain began to fall again. The same rain that had once brought two strangers together, and, as thunder rumbled above the city, Ethan turned toward the window, whispering to himself, "But redemption always comes with a price." A year passed. The city had changed, and so had the people within it. Ethan Cole was no longer the quiet janitor's son who dreamed beneath skyscrapers. He had built something of his own. After his mother's passing, he poured every bit of pain and purpose into creating a small foundation that helped underprivileged workers and their families, people like his father, people like himself. It started small, in a single rented room, but word spread about the young man who turned grief into kindness. Donations came in, volunteers joined, and before long, the Lily Foundation became a name people spoke with respect. A movement built not on money, but on compassion. Richard Brooks watched this transformation from afar. He saw the same young man he had once tried to crush, now doing what billionaires rarely could, changing lives with heart instead of power. The shame he'd carried since that night never left him, and it pushed him to do something he never thought he would. He stepped down as CEO. The announcement shocked the corporate world. At the press conference, Richard stood before reporters and simply said, "For years I built towers of glass and steel, but I forgot what they were meant to reflect: humanity. Today, I hand over Brooks Industries to someone who remembers that better than I do." Then, to everyone's astonishment, he turned toward Ethan. "Mr. Cole will lead the company's new foundation division, if he accepts." The crowd fell silent. Ethan, standing in the audience, looked stunned. His heart raced as he remembered his mother's words, "Kindness will always find its way back to you." He stepped forward and shook Richard's hand. "I accept, but only if this company stands for people who build dreams from dust, not just those who inherit them." Applause erupted. Olivia's eyes glistened with pride, her father's with peace. The world saw a billionaire and a janitor's son bridge the distance money once created. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Ethan and Olivia stood before a small group of guests at the opening of a new community center dedicated to Lily Cole. The plaque read, "A mother's love built this place." Olivia turned to Ethan and whispered, "She'd be proud of you." He smiled softly. "She'd be proud of us." Nearby, Richard watched them, his heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, he didn't see a poor boy and a rich girl. He saw two souls who had rewritten what love and success meant. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Ethan took something from his pocket. His old janitor's badge, worn and faded. He placed it inside a glass box at the entrance of the center. When Olivia asked why, he said quietly, "It's a reminder that no job, no person, and no life is ever too small to dream big." She leaned her head against his shoulder as children's laughter filled the air. And in that moment, the final judgment of life revealed itself, that kindness, not wealth, was the real measure of greatness. The poor janitor's son had fallen in love with a billionaire's daughter, and together they built a world where hearts, not bank accounts, defined worth.